Thank God for the gift of Jesus, the one who through his death and his resurrection offers the gift of life, the one that we were seeing the video images of, the kids are reminding us about already. What's coming up in the next couple of weeks? We enter into Palm Sunday and look towards and work through Holy Week as we work towards Easter Sunday itself. And it's all about the fact that through his death and his resurrection, Jesus offers the gift of life, the gift of salvation, the gift of eternity in heaven when our earthly life is done, to all who believe in him. You see, I believe that knowing Jesus gives meaning to our lives. I believe that knowing Jesus gives purpose to our lives. We aren't just called to go through the motions, and I think this is good news as well. We aren't just called to go through the motions, to, drag ourselves out of bed in the morning and maybe have to face the family or not. Go off to work or go off to school, put in our time there. Come home again in the evening, perhaps face the family again. Perhaps you face an empty home, an empty apartment. Maybe watch a little TV and go to bed and get up in the morning and start the same whole process over and again with this sense of emptiness, that this is all there is to life. Thankfully, we are not called to that. We are not called to just go through the motions like that. We're also not called just to focus on ourselves and the attitude of, with that sort of attitude that says, the one who dies with the most toys wins. We aren't called to that either. There's nothing wrong with having stuff, but if our life's focus is all about the things that we accumulate, the cars, the trucks, the quads, the snowmobiles, the motorcycles, you know what I mean. You get the picture. If that becomes our focus, then we still aren't near the meaning for our lives that Jesus calls us to. Do Lord was a bit of a flashback for me this morning to my childhood. How many of you sang that as a kid somewhere else at some point in time? Yeah, so quite a few of you. Some of you are sitting there thinking, that's a strange song. I've never heard that before, I'm sure. But for some of us, there is that flashback to our youth, I know. Thinking back a few years as well, I remember where I was in 1982 when I heard the news on the radio that Keith Green, a contemporary Christian musician, along with two of his young children, died in a plane crash near his home. Anybody remember Keith Green? To me, it's another one of those examples of somebody dying too young, before their time. I don't have a decision on that. I had 2 or 3 of Keith Green's albums, and if you're under 35 years of age, you might want to just go home and Google what album actually means, and then you'll have an understanding of what I'm talking about. But I had 2 or 3 of Keith Green's albums, and my favorite song of Keith Green's that had a significant impact, I would say, on me in my youth was a powerful, dramatic rendition he did of the story of the sheep and the goats from Matthew chapter 25. There were thunder crashes, there were dramatic pauses, there was intensity of music, the music rose and it dropped, and it just gripped me as to where I was at in my youth at that particular point in time. It's one of those passages that comes out of that last week of Jesus' life, between Palm Sunday and Thursday night. Sometime in that week, Jesus shared the words that have come to be known as the story of the sheep and the goats. And I believe that if you are ever wondering what meaning or purpose Jesus would call you to in your life, then this is a passage that is worth considering. It's a picture of when Jesus returns once again and all the people gather before him. And we're told that he divides them into 2 groups, like a shepherd separating sheep from goats. And he puts the sheep on his right and he puts the goats on his left. And then he addresses each one of these groups. This morning I want to focus on what it is that he addresses to the first group, the group known as the sheep. This is what it says. Come, You who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you fed me. I was thirsty, and you gave me a drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me into your home. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you cared for me. I was in prison, and you visited me. And then this is the part that I love, in a sense, is the unknowingness of these people. Because we're told then the righteous ones will reply, well, Lord, when? When did we ever see you hungry and feed you? Or thirsty and give you something to drink, Lord? When were you a stranger and we gave you hospitality? Or when were you naked and we gave you clothing? Or when did we ever see you sick and in prison and visit you, Lord? When? And the king will say, I tell you the truth. When you did it for one of the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you were doing it for me. In one brief yet powerful story, I believe Jesus gives meaning to our earthly lives. We aren't just to go through the motions. We aren't just to be concerned with ourselves. We are supposed to care for those who are in need around us with food or clothing or shelter or visitation or medication. Because when we give to another or care for another or help another, we're actually giving or caring or helping Jesus himself, because we are all God's children. This is a story. It's a parable. It's a descriptor. The list that Jesus gives here is not an exhaustive list. These are not just the things that we are called to do. But you understand what Jesus means by this. When you pull over in a snowstorm to give someone a push out of the ditch. When you mow your neighbor's lawn without being asked, because you know they're going through a bitter separation and the lawn is the last thing that they even are thinking about at this point in time. When you anonymously pass along an envelope with cash in it for a friend who is recently laid off from their work. When you are doing these things, you are doing it to Jesus himself. And I think it's important for us to remember as well that meaning for our lives is not just an individual thing. It goes way beyond ourselves to a corporate thing as well. I know that First Baptist Church, Prince George, and by that, I'm not talking about this building that we were meeting in. I'm talking about you, the people who make up First Baptist Church, Prince George. I know that you have been a beacon of hope to the community in which you live for many years. Don't ever lose sight of the purpose and the meaning for you as the body of Christ to this community. For when you care for the poor, when you give to the needy, when you comfort the sick, when you visit the imprisoned, it's as if it was Jesus himself that you were actually helping out. Doesn't that change the priority of everyone who has been before you? And from my role in what I do in working with our denomination, I think it's also significant to realize that one of the reasons why a church such as First Baptist Church Prince George is a part of a denomination is so that corporately, as groups of churches, we can provide meaning to our lives through serving Jesus on an even broader scale. Together we support Canadian Baptist Ministries in the Sharing Way.